Hello students, welcome to the second part of the topic, the living world. In the first part, we discussed about the criteria or characteristics which we are used to identify the living organisms. So in that we studied growth, reproduction, metabolism, consciousness, subconsciousness, emergence, all these characters. Now the next part of the topic deals with the diversity in the living world. Now what is diversity actually? Diversity is something represents the richness of the species. Okay, let us consider the different geographical part of the earth. When we look at the equatorial region, then temperature region above and below the equator, and the polar regions of the earth, the number of diverse organisms are more occupied in the equator region, because here environmental condition is more stable, which allow the organism to undergo more and more evolution, which lead to the formation of different types of species. Now scientists all over the world, they try to identify all the species present on the earth. So far they have documented around 1.7 to 1.8 million species. It doesn't mean that this is the only number of species which are available on the earth. Scientists are able to explore some part of the earth and they documented the species, but there are large amount of the part of the earth which were not explored and species are not identified. As we all know, human beings are unable to reach the deep ocean. At the same time, we don't know the core of the forest, what and all the organisms are present in the core of the forest. So far we are not able to explore. At the same time, desert, so these areas are not explored. There are so many reasons for that. One thing, the students who are opting taxonomy are very less, because it is a very boring subject. So very few taxonomists are found all over the world, and they are trying to identify the species, and they are following all the procedure to give the name to the species. Okay, so that's why so far we were successful in finding out 1.7 to 1.8 million species. Standardize the naming of living organisms such that particular organism is known by same name all over the world. This process is called nomenclature. We need to understand this definition properly. Why the scientific nomenclature of organism is so important? What happens if the name of the organism is called by a local name? Let us take one example of an animal or a plant or a fruit for better understanding. See, we have different language. If we take example of India, you just take a southern part of India. Here we have Kannada language, Malayalam language, Tamil language, Telugu language. Similarly, if you come to the southern part of the Karnataka, here we have Konkani language, then we have Havyaka language, then we have Tulu language. So likewise, there are so many languages there in a small state. So in that situation, each vernacular language has a particular name for a particular plant and an animal. Now, when it comes to scientific study, it is very hard to know the name of the organism all over the world. So it is better to have a common name all over the world, so no scientist in the world get confused with the vernacular names. That's why scientists are come up with the idea of giving scientific name to all the organisms, starting from bacteria to the most complex animals also. Okay, so here that's why definition for nomenclature is given. What is that? Standardize the naming. What is the meaning of standardizing? Giving a particular scientific name, living organism, such that particular organism is known by the same name all over the world. So for this we will study the binomial nomenclature later part of the topic, where they used Latin language to give scientific name to the organism which is accepted by the world. Now nomenclature or naming is only possible when the organism is described correctly, and to know what to organism the name is attached to means, and we know to what organisms the name is attached to, meaning what? First thing, we should identify whether it is a plant, animal, bacteria, fungus. So identification is important. Once we identify it, that means we know to what organism the name attached to. Okay, that means we identified it. Later we will characterize it. Once I identify this is fungus, now I start to write the characteristics of it, whether it has what type of hyphae, means hyphae means fungal body, whether it is septate or aseptate, whether it is branched or unbranched, what type of mycelium is present, what type of fruiting body is produced. After writing all those things, then we can classify them, it belongs to which particular class, whether it is Phycomycetes, Ascomycetes, Basidiomycetes, Deuteromycetes, like that we can classify them. That's why characterization is important. Now, in order to facilitate the study, number of scientists have established the procedure to assign the scientific name to each noun organism. That means the current system what we are practicing, binomial nomenclature, which is not the one procedure followed by the scientists earlier. They attempted different naming systems, trinomial systems, likewise there are many types. Finally they all agreed for this binomial nomenclature system, and for all the organisms and their naming, there are some organizations, they take names from different part of the country and they go through all the required procedures, whether characterization is correct, identification is correct, then nomenclature, then that organization will accept and the scientific name is released. So such organizations are ICBN, International Code for Botanical Nomenclature, which are specifically for plants, and ICZN, International Code of Zoological Nomenclature, this is for animals. Okay, now scientific names ensure that each organism has only one name. This is very important. See, if suppose one organism is called by different names in different parts, even though it is scientific name, again it creates ambiguity. That's why having a one name for one organism is very, very essential, and these organizations, they make sure that one organism has one name. Description of any organism should be enable the people to arrive at the same name. So what is the purpose of description? Let me give you one example. When I am studying in MSc, we used to study so many plant families. In our practical exam, they used to get the plants from different part of the district, and they give that plant material to us, and we are supposed to find out the name of the plant species. To find out the name of the plant species, we used to have a flora. Flora is nothing but a reference book. There are different types of floras are there. Madras flora, Udupi flora, like that different types of floras are there. These are the reference book. Now what we have to do? We have to take that plant and try to write all the characteristics, like what is the characteristics of leaf, then stem, then root, then flower, then fruit. All those things we should write, and then with the help of that reference book flora, we will try to find out the name of the species. So the same thing is given, description of any organism, whatever the description we will write should be enable the people. Means if I found out one particular species and I described it and I submitted to the ICBN and they accepted the name of the species, and once it is released all over the world, people should be able to come to the same conclusion when they go through the description of it. So they also ensure that such name has not been used for any other known organisms. So if I am a scientist, I found out a new species, I'm describing it, and I'm giving a new name for that organism, I should make sure that that name is not given to any other species. If in case I make mistake, these organizations, they cross check everything and finally they come to the conclusion that name of this species is not given to any other species and this is the new species and new naming. Okay, so that is the purpose of having these two organizations. Now, biologists follow universally accepted principle to provide scientific name to the organism. Universally accepted principle, which is that binomial nomenclature system. Now, each name has two common components. One is generic name and second one is specific epithet. Because of these two names, we call it as binomial nomenclature. This system of providing a name with two components is called binomial nomenclature, and this naming system given by Carolus Linnaeus. So for how many times we came across the name Carolus Linnaeus? Contribution to the biology and classification of organisms by Carolus Linnaeus was enormous. So wherever you go in classification, you come across a well-known scientist, Carolus Linnaeus. Binomial nomenclature system was also introduced by Carolus Linnaeus. Now, all over the world, all the biologists, they are using the system proposed by Carolus Linnaeus. This naming system using two words format was found convenient. This is the convenient system because I told you earlier there are so many attempts were made by different scientists all over the world by giving trinomial names like that, but those are not convenient. But binomial nomenclature system was found to be very convenient for all the scientists. So there are some examples we will take here. One scientific name is given, Mangifera indica. Very important name. Here you can see Mangifera indica, a scientific name of mango. Let us see how it is binomial name, where Mangifera represents genus name, species represents, indica represents species name. Okay, so these are the universal rules for nomenclature. Let us try to understand this universal rules, and application of this universal rule is also a universal for all of you, because in competitive exam what they will do, they were not going to give all these statements. Maybe in statement based question they will alter some statements, but there are high chances that they will give a question which is application part of all these statements. They will give one scientific name, and in that the format of writing the scientific name given in the four option, one of the option may be correct and other three are incorrect. To find out the incorrect scientific name, we should know what is the rule of binomial nomenclature. First rule, biological names are generally in Latin and written in italics. This is very important. Why should be the name in Latin language? There is one reason for that. Reason for this. Latin language is a dead language. meaning across the world this language is not in practice, it is not in use. So in this language there is no addition or deletion of letters or words. That's why it is called dead language. So scientists chose this language for binomial nomenclature because of dead language, because of no alterations. It will be a stable language for giving scientific name to the organisms, and they are Latinized, written in italics, in the sense when you go through MS Word, there is one word format called italics where words are in cross format. So that is called italics. So whenever you type it, it should be in italics. They are Latinized. This is interesting. This is really, really interesting. Imagine I'm a scientist. Okay. Harsha Bhatt sir is a scientist. Now I found out a plant which is nearer to Dakshina Kannada, and this plant is a new plant and I want to name that plant. So my intention is, for that plant I want to add my name. Suppose if I want to add the last part of my name, that is Bhatt. So what I can do, I can Latinize it to Latin language, that is Bhatt will become Bhattai. So likewise, whoever they find out the new species, they want to give scientific name. In that case, if they decide to give one of the word which represent their name, and that should be Latinized. If you are not convenient with the Latin words, then you can Latinize any word. It may be a Kannada, or it may be Telugu, Tamil, Malayalam, whatever it is, but it should be Latinized. Word should be Latinized. That means in that language there is one axis where you can Latinize the words. Okay. The first word in a biological name represents the genus, while the second name denotes the specific epithet. This is a very important part of the rules. The first word, like if I take an example of Mangifera indica, that Mangifera word represents the genus, and indica represents the species or specific epithet. Both the words in the biological name, when handwritten, are separately underlined. See, whenever it is typed in the computer, just to separate that name from other bulk words, it should be italicized. Suppose in a paragraph there is one name which is italicized, it clearly indicates that that particular name is scientific name. Likewise, when you are writing the description or a paragraph, in between you are writing a scientific name of the organism. In that case, when it is handwritten, it should be separately underlined, okay, or printed in italics to indicate the Latin origin. So whenever it is printed, it should be italicized. That means whenever it is handwritten, suppose I am writing a name of the humans, that is Homo sapiens. Now this scientific name is handwritten. I should indicate this with the separate underline. So this is small s, okay. The first letter of the genus should be capital, first letter of the species should be small. Now the first word denoting the genus starts with the capital letter, while the specific epithet starts with the small letter. So it can be illustrated with the example of Mangifera indica. Now in case of Mangifera indica, I want to show you this. See here, if I write a scientific name here, Mangifera indica, In the last, I will write lin. So what it indicates? My indicates genus name, indica represents species name, and lin represents the scientist who first time described the plant and named it. That is Linnaeus. So lin represents the Linnaeus. That's why scientist name comes after the species in the abbreviated form. This is very, very important. We are not going to write the entire name of the scientist. We just write it in the abbreviated form. So when it comes after the species. Okay, same thing is given. Name of the author appears after the specific epithet, that is at the end of the biological name, and is written in an abbreviated form, Mangifera indica lin. Now it indicates that this species was first described by Linnaeus. Since it is nearly impossible to study all the living organisms, it is necessary to devise some means to make this possible. This process is called classification. So why they have given this statement here? Because there are so many species. As we know, if we take one simple example of Asteraceae, sunflowers, there are around 20,000 different species. Likewise, if we take any monocots like Poaceae family, there are lakhs of different type of species. So if there is no proper organization or there is no classification, study of all these organisms will become very, very difficult. Okay, that's why classification is the most important part. Now what is classification? Classification is the process by which anything is grouped into convenient categories based on some easily observable characters. It's a very simple definition. Anything you group into a convenient category. That means, let me give you one example. There are different types of species, like sheep is one species, cow is another species, buffalo is another species, cat is another species, dog is another species, rabbit is another species. Now tell me, am I able to group all these organisms together? Is there any criteria for that? Yes. In my convenience, all these organisms are domestic animals. So I can classify them together because they are domesticated for different purposes. Likewise, classification is not something new. So long back, knowingly or unknowingly, we are classifying the organisms. Let me give you one more example. If you go to any of the traditional medicine providers, ask them to show you a medicinal plants. Now they will show you hundreds of different species. That means they classified those plants irrespective of their relationship based on one convenient character, that is they are all medicinal plants. They can classify them. So classification is what? Actually a grouping of organisms based on our convenience. Now for example, we easily recognize the groups such as plants or animals, or dog, cat, or insects. Now I will ask you to make one exercise. Now if I say the word dog, close your eyes. What picture comes to your mind? It's only a dog, not a cat, because you know the characteristics of dog. Likewise, if I tell you the name of one very unique species like Rixia, do you have any imagination in your mind? No, you can't, right? So classification, this is very easy when you know the characters. Okay, here that's why they have given easily recognized groups. These are all easily recognizable groups. When I say plants, you will have only the plants in your mind, not the animals or bacteria. You know the characteristics of plants. Plants have stem, root, leaves, flowers, fruits, seeds. Animals, they do not have it. That's why whenever I say the word plant, you will have the picture of plant in your mind. The moment we use any of these terms, we associate certain characters with the organisms in that group. Same thing what I explained. So what image do you see when you think of a dog? Obviously, each one of us will see a dog and not the cat. Okay. Now, see here one name is given. Now, if we were to think of Alsatian dogs, we know what we are talking about. Most of you are not aware of this particular breed in the dogs, Alsatian dogs. If you know about this dog, whenever we use the term Alsatians, we will have an idea about it. There are different breeds, okay, different breeds in dog. So one of that is Alsatian dog. Usually their furs are golden color and they are very beautiful breeds. Similarly, suppose we were to say mammals, you would of course think of animals with external ears and body hairs. So whenever I say mammals, you will imagine either a horse or a cow or a human being or any of the organism with external ear pinna and the body hairs and the mammary glands. So these are the very important characters to group the organism under mammalia. Likewise, in plants, if we try to talk of wheat, we will have an idea of wheat plant, not the rice or mango plant, right? Because we know the characteristics of this. So hence all these dog, cat, mammal, wheat, rice, plant, animals, etc. are convenient categories we use to study the organisms. So these are the convenient categories. Because of our convenience, we grouped those organisms together. The scientific term for this category is taxa. Now there are some technical words which create some ambiguity, some confusions. Now grouping means what? Simply organizing certain things together, that is grouping. Category means what? So it is also a grouping of organisms according to our convenience. Now taxa means what? Taxa is nothing but the category. But what is taxa? It is the scientific term of category. Now if I say Mangifera indica, this is one category, right? Now species is also a category. Now which is the scientific term actually? Mangifera indica is the scientific term. Okay, so let us see some of the example for better understanding. So here you must recognize that taxa can indicate the categories at different levels. So what it indicates? Now let me take a taxa of species, or in other words I will tell you, indica is the species, Mangifera is the genus, Anacardiaceae is the family, and Sapindales is the order. Then Dicotyledon is the class, Angiospermae is the division, and Plantae is the kingdom. See, all these are the taxa, actually grouping, but they are showing different hierarchy, different levels. Now I can study mango plant under Angiospermae, they are flowering plants, and I can also study mango plants under the Dicotyledon because they have two cotyledons, and I can study mango plant under the species indica. That means these are all taxa, but they have different hierarchy. What is hierarchy actually? In a very simple words, if I take any organization consisting of grouping, it contains members, but in that we observe hierarchy. If I take a college, we observe the lowest as peons, then comes first division clerk, then comes attenders, then comes lecturers, then comes principal, then comes chairman. So like that there are different hierarchies, but they all come under the organization, right? Now Therefore, animals, mammals, and dogs represents the taxa at different levels. So, animal at the kingdom level, mammal at the class level, dog at the species level. Hence, based on characteristics, all living organisms can be classified into different taxa. This process of classification is taxonomy. This is very important. Then what is taxonomy? Based on characteristics, all living organisms can be classified into different taxa. This procedure we call it as taxonomy. External and internal structures along with the structure of cell, developmental process, and ecological information of the organism are essential and form the basis of modern taxonomic studies. So what is it saying actually? Taxonomy is not just by looking at the morphological character and grouping the organisms. It requires the information from different aspects. What are those aspects actually? It includes external character, so morphologically how it appears, and it includes internal structures like anatomy, internally how those organisms are, along with the structure of cell. You need to know the structure of cell because some organisms are prokaryotes, some organisms are eukaryotes. So we need details of the cell structure and developmental process, how embryos develops, how the mature organisms appears, is there an alternation of generation, all those characters are required, and ecological information, in which ecosystem it lives, whether it is a desert, lake, or anything, that may be the ecosystem. Then, so these are some essential requirements, and that form the basis for modern taxonomic studies. So that gives us solid support for modern taxonomic studies. Hence, characterization, this is important, characterization, identification, classification, and nomenclature are the process that are basic to taxonomy. So first what we require, that is characterization. We are going to write a detailed description, whether it includes external character, internal character, developmental process, ecological information, cell structure, everything we will write. That is characterization. Then comes identification. You will identify the particular organism, whether it is prokaryote, eukaryote. In that eukaryote, it may be fungus, protist, plant, animal, whatever it is. Then comes classification, and finally we will give the scientific name to it. So this is the procedure. Taxonomy is not something new. Already I told you, even in the age where the scientific research are not present, but people used to classify the organisms based on their convenient. Likewise, I use the term domestic animals, so it doesn't require any scientific knowledge. What and all the livestock are used in the daily life are considered as domestic animals. Okay. Now, so same thing is given here. Human beings were since long not only interested in knowing more about different kinds of organisms and their diversities, but also the relationship among them. This is very important. So we should know the relationship between the organisms, because sometimes organisms are dependent. One organism completely depends on the other organism. So the branch of study was referred to as the systematics. The word systematics is derived from the Latin word systema, which means systematic arrangement of the organism. This information is very, very important. Okay. So what is given here? Read out one more time. Human beings were since long not only interested in knowing more about the different kinds of organism and their diversities, but also the relationships among them. means we are trying to understand the relationships. For that you should study phylogeny, their evolutionary relationship, how they evolved from simplest to complex, or how they have descendants, everything. So the branch of study was referred to as systematics. Systematics includes knowing the relationship between the organisms. That word comes from Latin word systema. So Linnaeus used the Systema Naturae as the title of his publication. Linnaeus wrote one book called Species Plantarum, in which he used this word Systema Nature as the title of the publication. Okay, the scope of systematics was later enlarged to include identification, nomenclature, and classification. Systematics takes into the account of evolutionary relationship between the organism. That means in systematics we are going to study the phylogeny. We are trying to understand the relationship between the organisms. So the next part is taxonomic category. There are so many technical terms here. We are trying to understand what they are. Classification is not a single step process but involves hierarchy of steps in which each step represents the rank or category. See how difficult this statement is to understand without an example. So we will try to take an example to make this statement very easier. So I will read out the statement once again and then we will take one example for this. Classification is not a single step process. That means it includes multiple steps but involves hierarchy of steps in which each step represents the rank or category. See, now I want to classify one organism under the family Solanaceae. Now, is it a single step process? No. In the first step, I will identify this particular organism is a plant. Now, I place that particular organism under the kingdom Plantae. And now, after the careful observation of the characteristics, I come to the conclusion that it is a dicotyledon. Then I place the organism under Dicotyledonae, that is the class. Before that we should place that under Angiospermae. Anyway, then after that I will found out that this is belong to the particular order. Then it belongs to which particular genus, Solanum. Then in that genus we should find out the characters are matching, whether tuberosum, melongena, or whatever it is. Okay, that's how we come to the final conclusion that this particular organism belongs to this particular species. That means classification is not a single step process. So it involves hierarchy of steps, starting from higher hierarchy to lower hierarchy, sometimes from lower hierarchy to higher hierarchy. So like that, classification is having different steps. Since the category is a part of overall taxonomic arrangement, it is called taxonomic category, and all the categories together constitute the taxonomic hierarchy. Okay, all the categories together constitute the taxonomic hierarchy. It may be species, genus, then order, class, then division or phylum, then kingdom. All these taxonomic categories, they constitute the taxonomic hierarchy, in which species is the lowest hierarchy, kingdom is the highest hierarchy. Each category referred to as a unit of classification, in fact, represents the rank and is commonly termed as taxon. So taxon is the singular, taxa is the plural. What it is explaining actually? Each category, now again category means grouping, referred to as a unit of classification. That is the basic unit of classification. For any classification, first you need a grouping, nothing but category. In fact, represents the rank. That means category including everything, species, genus, all those things, represents the rank. Rank is nothing but hierarchy and is commonly termed as taxon. So instead of using rank, category, everything, we simply use the term taxon to represent the classification. So taxonomic categories and hierarchy can be illustrated by an example. Insects represents the group of organisms sharing common features like 3 pairs of jointed legs. Okay, insects, they have 3 pairs of jointed legs. It means insects are recognizable concrete objects which can be classified and thus were given a rank or category. Now once we look at the insect, they have jointed legs, 3 pairs of legs. Once I have this character in my mind, I can classify them under different categories with different hierarchy. Now I can classify them under Animalia, kingdom Animalia, or I can classify them under the phylum Arthropoda or the order Insecta. Likewise, we can group them under different taxon. Remember, groups represents the category. Group represents the category. Clearly here they have mentioned any group represents the category. Category further denotes the rank because category has a different rank, hierarchy. Okay. Then each rank or taxon, these are the similar words now, in fact represents the unit of classification. Grouping represents the category further denotes the rank or taxon in fact represents the unit of classification. Now here one very important statement given, just go through this. These taxonomic groups or categories are distinct biological entities and not merely morphological aggregates. What is the meaning of this? Seems to be a very complex statement, right? See, we'll take example to understand this. Taxonomic groups or categories are distinct biological entities. Now, if somebody says horse and donkey appears almost same, so I will classify them together. Is it possible? No, it is not possible. Why it is not possible? Because in taxonomic grouping, we take certain criteria to group the organisms. They have independent existence. They have independent entity. Simply not because they are appearing similar in characters, we cannot group them together. So we will take all the criteria for classification and we will take all the considerations, like when they are same species, they should be able to produce fertile offsprings. When they are failed to produce the fertile offsprings, they are not placed together. So just because two organisms appear similar, we cannot place them together. That's why it's not merely a morphological aggregates. So it is having a solid proof by taking different evidence and we are classifying the organisms. Okay. So taxonomical studies of all known organisms have led to the development of common categories such as kingdom, phylum, division, class, order, family, genus, and species. All organisms, including those in the plant and animal kingdoms, have species as the lowest category. Okay, species is the lowest, kingdom is the highest. So the basic requirement is the knowledge of characters of an individual or group of organism. This is the basic. So this helps in identifying the similarities and dissimilarities among the individuals of the same kind of organisms as well as other kind of organisms. We'll try to understand all those things one by one while studying this taxonomic hierarchy from species to kingdom.